I would like to welcome Lynda Kearns. Hi, Lynda.
Hi, Bridget.
Lynda is a family law barrister. Tell us more about what you do.
Right, well, I've been doing family law, specialised in family law for at least 30 years, probably more. My job now is mainly in relationship property and trust property, but I still do some work with children, Care of Children Act matters, all the other aspects of family law, protection matters, family protection matters in relation to estates, but it's mostly relationship property and trust property that I deal with now.
So you're really, really busy.
I am very busy, yeah. There's no end of work, unfortunately.
So tell me, because you as you just mentioned, you specialise in trust work.
Yes.
So tell me the difference between relationship property and trust property.
Right, that's a good question, because relationship property is the property that you acquire in the course of your relationship, you acquire together. But trust property is property which is owned actually by the trust, so that means that the husband and wife don't actually own the property, the trust owns the property. It's kind of what we describe as a legal fiction, but the whole point of it is that your assets are then entrusted to independent trustees, and you are then just a beneficiary of the trust, so you don't have actual ownership.
Right. So what can people do to protect themselves in relation to property that is assets that are owned by a trust?
It's a real problem in New Zealand, because New Zealand has probably got more trusts than just about anywhere in the world. People are told to set up trusts, and they routinely do. So it's actually very important for people in the course of their relationship to understand the status of their property. Is it property which they own personally, or is it property which is owned by a trust? If you know and find out that property is owned by a trust, then it's important to understand who are the trustees, because ultimately they have the power. And if it's assets which have been acquired in the relationship or owned by a trust, you should really be a trustee yourself. And if you're not a trustee yourself, you need to be very clear as to the relationship you have with your trustees, whether you're keeping in contact with them, whether they're acting for you in your best interests. Because as a beneficiary, of course, you've got the right to have trust property managed and administered for your benefit. So it's important that you understand what property is owned, who runs the trust, and what your rights are as a beneficiary.
Right, okay, so in relation to that, how does the Property Relationship Act cover trust issues?
Well, the problem is that the Property Relationships Act only deals really with relationship property and separate property. Of course, separate property is property which is not owned by the parties jointly, but is owned separately. Either you've been gifted it or you've inherited it. The way that the Property Relationships Act deals with trust property is it provides compensation if property during the course of the relationship is transferred to a trust, so the benefit of it is lost. That's one way. The second way is that you can set aside property that has been transferred to a trust if that transfer has occurred to defeat your interest in property. That's quite a hard test. But those are really the only ways in terms of the Act that apart from maybe making a claim that you have a constructive trust interest, which means you've done work and services for the trust, you may be able to make a claim in that way, but it's reasonably limited.
Right. Well, thank you. I mean, those actions in terms of what you can take are really important to know, and I think it'll be a lot of interest to our viewers. So thank you very much for coming today.
No
really
problem.
Appreciate it.